On September 3rd, China held a stunning military parade in Beijing that captivated the world. The neatly organized military formations and advanced cutting-edge weaponry undoubtedly attracted global attention. For me, the central scene left a deep impression. But what you might not know is that just one day before the parade, China, Russia, and Mongolia quietly signed a 30-year natural gas cooperation agreement. This deal, worth over $900 billion, is a superorder that could impact the future global energy landscape. Interestingly, almost at the same time, Europe is doing everything it can to break free from its reliance on Russian natural gas, even planning to completely phase out imports in the next few years. China's involvement could potentially replace Russia's gas exports to Europe on a nearly equivalent scale. In today's video, we'll talk about why it took nearly a decade for the three countries to negotiate a pipeline project and what kind of real-world impact this project will have on Europe. If you like our video content, please click to subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you can receive all our latest video content. Now, let's get into today's topic. Russia plays a crucial role in the global energy landscape, particularly in the oil and natural gas sectors. According to data released in 2024, Russia has approximately 80 billion barrels of proven oil reserves, accounting for about 5% of the global total. Its daily crude oil production is around 11 million barrels, roughly 11% of global output. In other words, 1 barrel of oil out of every 10 on the global market comes from Russia. However, compared to oil, it is natural gas that is truly Russia's trump card. Currently, Russia's proven natural gas reserves total 37.5 trillion cubic meters, making up 1/5 of the world's total reserves. This means that Russia has the capacity to supply natural gas to the world for a long time in a stable manner, especially to the European market. For decades, Europe has been the largest buyer of Russian energy exports. Before the outbreak of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, over half of the oil exported by Russia went to Europe, while in the case of natural gas, the annual export to Europe reached as high as 150 billion cubic meters. Among these, Germany was Russia's largest natural gas buyer, with more than half of its imports relying on Russian gas. Countries like Italy, Austria, and Hungary even depended on Russian pipeline gas for about 80% of their supply. However, since the Russia-Ukraine conflict erupted in 2022, the decades-long energy cooperation between Russia and Europe has undergone a fundamental transformation. In response to sanctions on Russia, the European Union was the first to announce a complete ban on imports of Russian oil. Shortly afterward, the G7 nations also imposed a price cap on Russian oil. Meanwhile, Russia's Nord Stream pipeline, which had been supplying natural gas to Europe, drastically reduced its deliveries and was eventually forced to halt completely after explosions. Another pipeline that transits through Ukraine also became increasingly unstable due to the ongoing geopolitical tensions. From 2022 to 2025, Western countries have steadily intensified sanctions on Russian energy and announced plans to completely end their reliance on Russian energy by 2027. Amid these changes, Russia has gradually moved away from relying on the European market and is shifting the focus of its natural gas exports eastward. Now, Russia is planning to build the Power of Siberia 2 gas pipeline to open a new energy export route to the east. According to publicly available information, the Power of Siberia 2 natural gas pipeline was officially proposed as early as 2015. At that time, Russia and China reached a preliminary agreement to jointly promote the project, with a total investment estimated at up to $90 billion. The pipeline is over 3,000 kilometers long, starting from Russia's Yamal Peninsula, passing through Mongolia, and ultimately reaching northeast China. The core goal of the project at that time was to enhance Russia's natural gas supply capacity to the Chinese market with the potential to transport about 50 billion cubic meters of gas annually. However, over the past decade, the Power of Siberia 2 pipeline has progressed slowly, and the project has been postponed several times. So, what exactly caused such an important energy project to stagnate for 10 years? In fact, during the early stages of the project, Russia did not prioritize the Power of Siberia 2 pipeline. The reason is simple. At that time, Europe was still the largest buyer of Russian natural gas, and the cooperation between the two sides was stable. Meanwhile, China mainly imported natural gas from the Middle East and other regions, meaning that the energy interdependence between Russia and China was not yet significant. Therefore, for Russia, investing hundreds of billions of dollars to build a pipeline thousands of kilometers long was not considered cost-effective. Additionally, the differences in natural gas pricing between the two countries also posed a major obstacle. China hoped to import natural gas at a price close to Russia's domestic subsidized level, while Russian gas companies insisted on negotiating based on the export price standards to Europe. In addition to the pricing issue, there were also clear disagreements regarding the route of the pipeline. Russia had advocated for the pipeline to pass through Mongolia, which would shorten the route by about 1,000 kilometers. However, this would require China to bear additional transit fees and could even lead to geopolitical constraints for Mongolia. On the other hand, China preferred a route that started from a small Russian border town, passed through Zabaikalsk, and directly entered Chinese territory. Although this route would avoid Mongolia, it would come with a higher overall cost. Of course, Mongolia, as one of the participants in the project, also seeks to benefit from it. During the negotiations, Mongolia hoped to gain substantial transit revenue, but was unwilling to bear excessive construction costs. As a result, the three parties had differing positions on key issues such as the route, pricing, investment, and benefits, making it difficult to reconcile their interests and leading to a prolonged stalemate. At the time, Western media even predicted that the highly anticipated Power of Siberia 2 pipeline could be indefinitely postponed. However, unexpectedly, China, Russia, and Mongolia have now formally reached an agreement and signed a 30-year natural gas cooperation deal. What exactly happened behind this transformation? During the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit held in 2025, China and Russia reached a series of major cooperation agreements covering key strategic areas such as energy, space, artificial intelligence, and agriculture, with more than 20 cooperation documents signed. The most notable of these was the latest progress on the Power of Siberia 2 natural gas pipeline project. Alexei Miller, CEO of Gazprom, stated at the summit that after several rounds of in-depth negotiations, representatives from Russia, China, and Mongolia had officially signed a tripartite memorandum to jointly advance the construction of two new natural gas pipelines. The entire cooperation period spans 30 years, with a total value exceeding $900 billion. In fact, the two pipelines currently under development are the Power of Siberia 2 and the Eastern Union natural gas pipelines. The Power of Siberia 2, also known as the China-Russia-Mongolia natural gas pipeline, starts from Russia's Yamal Peninsula, passes through Mongolia, and finally reaches northeast China. The section that crosses Mongolia's territory is referred to as the Eastern Union Pipeline. In this cooperation, Mongolia also hopes to take the opportunity to directly import natural gas from Russia. According to the agreement signed by the three parties, the Power of Siberia 2 project is scheduled for completion in 2030. By then, Russia will supply about 50 billion cubic meters of natural gas annually to China through this pipeline. Additionally, Russia has committed that the gas supply price to China will be lower than the price it charges for exports to the European market. In addition to advancing the Power of Siberia 2 pipeline, Russia also signed a new agreement with China during this round of negotiations. The plan is to increase the annual gas supply through the existing Power of Siberia 1 pipeline from the current 38 billion cubic meters to 44 billion cubic meters. This means that once both pipelines are completed and fully operational, Russia's total annual natural gas supply to China will reach an astonishing 106 billion cubic meters. If we calculate using the current market price of around $28 per 100 cubic meters of natural gas, China will purchase over $30 billion worth of natural gas from Russia each year. With a 30-year cooperation period, the total amount will exceed $14 billion. However, this raises a question. Since Russia intends to reduce its dependence on the European market, can China truly replace the entire demand from Europe? As mentioned earlier, the EU plans to completely stop importing Russian energy by 2027. However, before sanctions, Russia used to supply around 150 billion cubic meters of natural gas to Europe each year. According to the current plans between China and Russia, the two natural gas pipelines are expected to provide a total of 106 billion cubic meters of gas to China annually. This figure is already close to 70% of the volume Europe imported annually from Russia. In theory, this could completely replace the market share Russia is losing in Europe. However, for the EU, while they have implemented severe energy sanctions on Russia, the results have not fully met expectations. After reducing oil and gas import from Russia, the EU had to turn to the United States and the Middle East for energy supplies. While this diversified their energy sources to some extent, the liquefied natural gas exported from the US is far more expensive than Russia's pipeline gas, leading to a significant rise in overall energy costs. In fact, the natural gas prices in some countries have increased by more than 50% compared to pre-sanction levels. Due to the lack of stable supply channels, many regions, especially Eastern European countries, still face shortages in natural gas supply. According to some data, from 2022 to 2024, the EU's total crude oil imports dropped by about 30%. This has increased the financial burden on citizens and caused some industrial enterprises to fall into energy shortages. Of course, this pipeline is also very important for China. As the world's largest energy consumer, China's annual natural gas consumption is about 380 billion cubic meters, with imports accounting for more than 40%. However, aside from Russia, China's major natural gas imports mainly come from Central Asian countries, such as Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan. In the past, Turkmenistan, the traditional largest supplier of pipeline gas, was relatively stable. But in 2024, Kazakhstan significantly reduced its natural gas exports to China, decreasing by 40% compared to the previous year. Meanwhile, Uzbekistan, which once supplied nearly 10% of China's pipeline natural gas, has completely stopped natural gas exports. Therefore, China now needs to increase its pipeline gas supply, and the most feasible and reliable way to do this is to continue increasing its procurement of Russian gas. Furthermore, the Power of Siberia 2 pipeline also helps China break through the energy blockade attempts led by the United States. In the past, a significant portion of China's natural gas was dependent on maritime transport, from the Persian Gulf to the Strait of Hormuz, from the Indian Ocean to the Malacca Strait. These key shipping routes are largely controlled by the U.S. Given the current geopolitical situation with increasing potential confrontation between China and the U.S., energy security has become even more strategically significant. And by obtaining natural gas directly from Russia via land pipelines, it will undoubtedly greatly expand China's energy lifeline. To not miss out on our future projects and news updates, please make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. We will continue to provide you with more exciting and interesting content.